Prejudice and stereotyping. Prejudice is a preconceived opinion of a person based on that person belonging to a certain group. This may be prejudice due to race, or gender, or sexual orientation, or any other identifiable group. Stereotyping is forming an opinion of one person of a group and applying that judgment to all members of that group. This would be like an employer saying, I have hired one teenager and he was lazy, so therefore all teenagers are lazy. Although prejudice and stereotyping are not illegal, they often lead to acts of discrimination, which violate human rights and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. A person or party that claims they have been discriminated against is the complainant. The person or party that allegedly act in a discriminatory manner is the respondent. There are various types of discrimination. Intentional discrimination, treating others unfairly based on prejudicial factors such as race, religion, or gender. Unintentional discrimination, seemingly neutral or innocent actions that still discriminate against a particular group. There are some defenses for employers against discrimination. For example, bona fide occupational requirements can be used if they can prove that the act of apparent discrimination was necessary for the job. For example, hiring only female counselors in an abused women's shelter. Homosexuality was a crime in Canada until it was removed from the Criminal Code in 1967 by Pierre Trudeau. He was the Justice Minister in the Pearson government at that time. There's no place for the state in the bedrooms of the nation. This is a famous quote from Pierre Trudeau. In 1996, the federal government added sexual orientation to the Canadian Human Rights Act to protect gays and lesbians from discrimination in federal matters. In 1999, the Supreme Court ruled that same-sex couples have the same rights as opposite-sex couples. In 2002, many same-sex couples challenged the legal definition of marriage, that being a union between a man and a woman, excluding all others. They successfully argued that they were being denied their equality rights based on their sexual orientation. In 2005, the Martin government changed the traditional definition of marriage and introduced the Civil Marriage Act, which defines marriage as a union between two persons. Although the list of legal disabilities varies from province to province, they typically include such things as brain injuries, mental illness, physical disabilities, blindness, deafness, obesity, epilepsy, behavioral and learning problems, substance abuse, and developmental disabilities. Historically, people with disabilities have been marginalized. Since the 1980s, there has been an emphasis in Canada to include people with disabilities in society so that they can live with dignity. Despite the progress that has been achieved over the years for people with disabilities, there are still many issues. In schools, many can still not meet the needs of students who have physical or developmental disabilities, especially in older buildings. In the workplace, many businesses and government buildings still do not provide complete access to people with disabilities, for example, things like wheelchair ramps. It often takes a formal human rights complaint to be filed before any action is taken. In addition to the Canadian Human Rights Act and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, there are provincial versions as well. In order to analyze a human rights case, you have to ask first, is the matter a human rights issue? Do federal or provincial human rights laws apply? Is there discrimination evident? Is there any attempt at providing reasonable accommodation? Is there a remedy under the human rights law? If a complainant is found to have been a victim of discrimination, there are a variety of remedies which he may receive as compensation. It may be in the form of damages, cover lost wages and mental anguish. It may be a letter of apology. Employers may have to rehire employees or establish anti-discrimination programs. If a respondent refuses to provide the compensation, he will face criminal charges and/or fines. Tribunals have legal authority to impose remedies, just like the courts.